Hi, Phelim here.
Ann McElhinney.
Welcome to the Ann Phelim Scoop. Today we have a very special edition of the Ann Phelim Scoop. We're going to be talking to Katie Hopkins, the British commentator, newspaper columnist, and all-round interesting person. We recorded this show a little while back, just before Boris Johnson prorogued Parliament and all the things that have happened since. But actually, the interview stands up really well, so please watch it. We've had a great time with Katie, and
as we said, more than probably, we actually are going to go to London for Brexit on the 31st of October.
And it looks like there will be a Brexit.
And it looks like there will be, and we both have been asked to speak at the Battle of Ideas in London. So anyone who's over there, we'd love to see you and meet you at that time.
Come along and say hello. So now let's go to us interviewing Katie Hopkins.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Ann McElhinney.
And I'm Phelim
And we are joined today by the ever wonderful, ever fabulous, ever gorgeous Katie Hopkins. What a thrill to have you.
Yes.
What a thrill to have you in our...
just keep saying nice things. I'll just say
in our humble abode.
Yes.
It's really nice. Thank you so much for coming and making the time for us today.
Totally my pleasure.
And Katie has joined us from across the pond, as you might hear. We're joined by Katie, who's one of the freshest voices in the UK today, and that's because I think you tell some uncomfortable truths. But you do it with a smile. And you're very like Mark Stein, actually. You can, as someone says, you can laugh all the way through the decline and fall. You know, yes.
He said, I love him very much,
Yes.
but he has a good, I think it's a similar thing where we deal a lot with a lot of very dark stories,
Yes.
a lot of very dark issues and very big things. And you can come away from these events or gatherings or conversations feeling like, oh.
Yes.
And I think what we're trying to do, Mark, maybe myself a little, is also bring the light and see that laughing, mostly at myself, but laughing at ourselves and laughing in the humour of it is really important too, if we're going to carry our message wider.
Yes. Yeah.
So, who is Katie Hopkins? Newspaper columnist, TV presenter, Apprentice contestant. I think it's when you first really sprung to prominence. Tell us about that. Tell us about...
Yeah, so it was really strange. I ended up, we'll I guess talk about my military background at some point, but I had to leave the army, which is all I ever wanted to do. I had a 35-year regular commission. I was going to be the first female general. That was the plan. And I was going to be in the intelligence corps all my life. That was absolutely what I was going to do. I had to leave because I'm also epileptic. We can talk about that. And so I ended up working in management consultancy, working in business. I went to Manhattan and lived in the East Village I think I was the only straight girl in the village, obviously, for 5 years. And then when I came to leave New York and go back to the UK and had a couple of children, I thought, well, I need to change. I need to do something new again. I need to start over. And in America, I had watched The Apprentice, but the American version, which is actually quite good because there's this guy called Trump who's quite smart and he's quite good at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But actually in the UK, the UK version is the poor man's alternative. It's the dollar store Apprentice, I think it's fair to say, run by a very short man called Lord Sugar, who is nipple height, which is always disappointing. And this is one of the issues from a camera perspective, and you guys work with cameras quite a lot. In order for him to appear taller than nipple height, he would be right next to the camera, and we would all have to be virtually in the other room for a sense of perspective.
I got you. Nice. I like it.
Otherwise, we were too tall, and he didn't look superior and commanding enough. Anyway, so I got to the end of The Apprentice, and then the reason I became a bit known was because I was the first apprentice to fire Lord Sugar. So I told him I didn't want his job, actually. And I had a better job of my own, and I left.
Very good.
Yeah.
And you talked about your military background, and where were you? Where did you go?
So Sandhurst. So I started
Sandhurst
is a Royal Military Academy. Sandhurst, you go there to do officer training, and I guess for an American perspective, that would be like West Point, but obviously Sandhurst is better because it's British, and we're just kind of tougher.
Controversial.
So I went through Sandhurst for a year, started off as a platoon of 30 girls, lumpy jumpers, they called us, and we came out as 8 girls got through.
Right.
Wow.
And then, after that I had to be medically discharged because of my epilepsy.
Can I just interrupt and ask, give us like a day, like what would an average day in Sandhurst be like? Give us like a picture of that.
So it's hilarious. It's everything. If you can imagine what you think stereotypical torture army, what can you do to people that would hurt the most? Just do that all the time, every hour. So they give you boots that don't really fit properly. All the kit is for males because there's no equality in the army, means you get just treated the same, which actually is an equality I quite like. Yeah. But it just means your kit it's not made for women, or we take our weight differently, like on our hips. Guys take it on their backs. So they do things like get large logs, like 6 foot, 8 foot, 4 meter long logs, big logs, and attach ropes to them, and you have to run round with it as a group carrying the log round. Like that's like a 30-minute bit.
And you're doing this at 6 o'clock in the morning or something?
Oh, yeah. And then they take you out on exercise, 8 days living in a wood somewhere, pretending to fire at made up, enemy. And you do lie there in the rain in Wales at some point thinking, I went to university, I did economics, I'm now lying in a bush in Wales pretending to fire at someone who doesn't want to kill me. Mm-hmm. And there is a weirdness to that. Yeah. But I think the good thing about Santos is where if you do go, it just equips you with this kind of resilience. Yes. And so whether you're military or not, whether you're pro-fighting forces or not, there is a resilience thing. And I think it would be great if we had a form of national service, not like a conscription thing, but just a form of service that taught kids a bit of this resilience, because I think it's what we're lacking a little bit.
It's interesting, actually, you say that. It kind of brings up that, that Jordan Peterson, and he has the rules for living or whatever.
Yes,
and he was talking, I just watched a thing from him the other day, and he was talking about, one of his rules is like, make your bed. I think, isn't that it? Clean your room.
Yes.
Really, you're going to take on the world? Why can't you clean your room first, Yes. And I'm a bit loath to say that, actually, given the fact that you've just seen our house.
Your house is lovely. Your house is light.
Right, okay, great.
As well.
Yeah, and there's certain rooms in this house you haven't seen because everything got shoved in there before you arrived.
That's what we all do, though.
It's kind of like Dorian Gray, there's certain rooms that are tidy because there's one room that's really untidy.
The thing I think we all relate to as well is, when you're selling a house and we do this weird thing where we pretend we don't function like a regular person. So we do things like we take the toaster or the toothbrushes and we put them in a drawer. Yeah. Because what normal people don't clean their teeth?
Yeah.
We just pretend to be, this is how we live.
Exactly.
This sterile thing. So, no, you have a lovely house.
Well, thank you
very
much.
Thank you. So I suppose to get to the news, we would like to start with the news on this podcast. Let's start with the most recent news, Brexit. Borris is now heading towards, or is Borris heading? Actually, give us a background here. What is Brexit? Why are we going to see it? It was 3 years ago, and is Borris going to deliver it?
So excitingly, Britain's always had a sense, I think, that we feel ourselves in decline. We know we're falling. Many of us, I'm very outspoken about the fact that I don't want America to fall as we have fallen. That's why I'm here in America often. That's my message. Yeah. Don't let yourself fall. So the chance that we had to vote about whether we wanted to be in the EU or out of the EU was a massive opportunity for all of these voices that are never heard, never seen in the media, never appear in the London press because it's all of London and the establishment and the elite. All of these voices that I knew were out there all had this one day where we got to go to a polling station, we got to put our cross on a piece of paper, and we got to say, no, we don't want to be governed by bureaucrats. No, we don't want to be part of the EU anymore. And no, actually, from my point of view, no, I don't want open borders. No, I don't want to be part of Schengen. No, I don't want Merkel's migrants here. No, all those reasons. For whatever reason, we ticked that box. 17.4 million of us voted to leave. And so 23rd of June 2016 was definitely the best night of my life ever. And I've been married twice. So, but I was so overjoyed, not only because I could feel that Brexit was going to win, I knew before, and then it happened, but just watching the faces of the BBC broadcasters, watching them, and they couldn't bring themselves to say, and Leave has won. And there was contortion.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the same when Trump won and they had to call Pennsylvania. Yeah. And CNN were like, they couldn't physically, it was like they were vomiting words. Yeah. Yes. And so Brexit happened. The UK voted to end our relationship with the EU. But for 3 years, that hasn't happened. It looked very likely it would never happen. Every conceivable device and mechanism and fraudulent use of the law that could be used by the establishment has been used. And now suddenly we've got Borris. And Borris marched into number 10. He fired every single one of the Remain, so the people that would wish to stay in the EU. He fired every single one of them. If you were sitting on the fence, he fired you as well. You know, he really just went and shook the whole place up. So super exciting. I think Brexit is going to happen, and I believe we will leave on the 31st of October with no deal. So the deal thing was about, would we leave with a deal where we sign up to a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of this? For people like myself, strong Brexiteers, true Brexiteers, you know, we'd much prefer to leave with no deal and start again. One funny story, briefly. My father and we both have the Union flag. I know, I love being in America because you fly your flags. I get properly emotional about it because we don't really see the Union anymore around the UK. Anyway, so my father has a Union flag, and because he didn't get the Brexit he voted for, he's 72, he put the flag down to half-mast as a protest thing in his little village in the countryside. And then a few neighbours came knocking to my mum because they thought my dad had died. And she put the flag at half-mast because someone was dead, so Dad had to go back up and put it back up so that no one was dead. I know, it's a cute little story. And what I love about Brexit as a whole kind of, the bigger theme for me, and it goes back to what we just talked about at the Academy, is resilience. And what I think it's really shown, actually, is that the silenced people of the UK, who are never seen in the media, but whom you might see at the local Sainsbury's or, well, it wouldn't be Whole Foods, it would be the dollar store.
Tesco, whatever.
Tesco, whatever's the equivalent. The resilience of those people to still demand what they never got, I think it's been really emotional for me because I love them all.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, we're planning to be, and we hope we could see you in London actually on the 31st.
The Ann Phelim Scoop is going to London.
We're going to London because I mean, and I'm not British. Phelim is British. I'm not British. I'm emotional about it. And we were funny. We watched the night, the special night in 2016 together in our home, and we were like, and it ended so quickly. You know, it was so fast. And as you say, this crumbling faces of the BBC and Sky News is like, you know, what happened here? And as you say, it's exactly right. It was a very similar night to the night that we had when Trump was elected, and we had a spectacular night of
the joy,
of joy. And Phelim actually wanted to drive around the Hollywood Hills actually with playing the American anthem with a flag out the back.
Journalistically, it was a journalistic expert.
That is very.
I also want to add, for the record, I did spend an awful lot of my adult life trying to get out of Britain.
You did.
Yes, that doesn't change the EU rule, the EU vote or anything like that. But I just wanted to put that on the record. I may have been born British, but
it's interesting you talk about that emotional thing. I mean, we're very friendly with Claire Fox, the MEP, and she's as amused as everyone by me saying that. But and she, what a wonderful person, and
soon to be former MEP,
and she's praying for that, as we all are.
I have to say, I'm kind of I do want Brexit, and I would love to see the vote honoured. But did you know that Claire is an MEP for a year? She gets a pension.
For the rest of her life.
Yeah, for the rest of her life.
From Europe.
But then, of course, as much as I admire Claire being in the Brexit party, inside me, my gut is not a fan of Claire because I knew her historically when she was more left-wing than the IRA.
Yes.
So there will always be a reaction to me that goes,
yes, you don't want her to get a pension then.
No, I don't want Claire Fox to get a pension because she was the one that was celebrating when the Tories were bombed in Brighton. Yes. So she's your friend, but to me, she'll always be an IRA supporter. Yes. But I love the fact she's still. I love the fact that Brexit Party embraced somebody like that, and I also love the fact that Anne Widdecombe, who's a member of the Brexit Party, who was in the hotel that was bombed by the IRA, is in the same party as Claire Fox.
It was a very
cool
and also she's a huge Catholic though, Anne Widdecombe, correct? So she's obviously forgiving and.
But I mean, I think. I was going to say it was a very clever thing of Farage to do to bring all these people together, but actually it wasn't that clever because this transcends right or left, actually. Democracy transcends right or left. And Brexit, in a weird way, because there was always these, I mean, I grew up on the left and we were always anti-EU. You know, from an anti-democratic point of view, you were always, even on the left, you were anti-EU. And on the right, you were anti-EU for a different, probably for the similar reasons, actually.
Similar.
And actually, I think back then the EU was kind of seen as a right-wing grouping. But it just shows you the amount of posing that goes on in politics. You know, none of those lefties were anti-EU. They were virtue signaling their anti-EU-ness. But when it came a chance to get out of the EU and implement the wishes of the people, they will not do it. They will refuse.
It's unbelievable.
And I think that's where the leadership of the left is so disassociated from the real meat of the Labour heartlands, because, as you know, many of those Labour heartlands voted leave.
Yes.
But of course, the leadership, as you correctly say, had no intention of implementing that ever. And I think it has been one of these really a pivotal moment for the history of the UK, this idea that we had a vote that had the potential to be ignored because the people in power said that we made the wrong decision. You know, and that then you're asking people to pay their council tax.
Oh no, it's unbelievable.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. And we've had this thing.
thing.
Oh no, but we've had that thing as well when we've been home, and people have been so anti-Brexit, so anti-Boris.
Yeah.
And I, and we try, we don't want to fall out with everyone we know. We don't want to have. We want to have some friends
You'd like
left.
to have some friends.
Like to have some friends. But somebody said something casual about Brexit or whatever, and I said, and really, it is an emotional issue because, the suffragettes. They threw themselves in front of horses. They died.
Yeah.
They were force-fed in prisons. For what?
Yeah.
So we're actually spitting in the memory of these incredible women who did this incredible thing to get this universal suffrage, which now is a nothing burger. Now it's like, and I have heard people, and it's so extraordinary to hear a person who calls themselves liberal saying things like, basically saying, well, smart people should be the ones voting, and it's like, whoa,
yeah, they did say that.
When did that come out?
Yeah,
I feel like we asked. Can I just mention? I feel like we asked Katie a question and didn't let her answer. So part of your
That's
question,
okay, because I'm listening to you. So the way you speak is really. I know you'll be aware because you've known each other quite a long time, but your enthusiasm that you load into every word you say is a very cool skill that you have. I could sit and listen to you for ages.
Look at you.
No, it's real.
That's very sweet.
When you speak, there is you could just go for it yourself. I'm very happy just to listen.
You.
But you're passionate about what you are saying, and you're so connected to what you say, and that's very different to many people in our world. We're not in the same world probably, but who deal behind cameras and behind microphones. Sometimes you look at them and you think, are you even hearing yourself? Because they perform a thing.
Yes.
I think what you guys, and it's noticeable to me, is you are meaning what you say. You're so connected with what you're trying to say. Like, do you mean this authentically? So I'm just observing that.
I want to go back. I want to go back to, because you asked the question. Whoa.
That's definitely somebody at the door.
That's somebody at the door.
That could be someone fun.
That is evidence that
we are in a
friends.
That we have friends. Maybe. Who knows?
It could be someone fun. If it's someone really fun, we should invite them in for the
Yeah,
chat.
exactly.
Anyway,
So,
you were going to ask a question.
I was going to go back to, do you think Boris can pull this off? Because the forces of darkness almost is like, it's really, and it's, I just think it's such a potentially dark. I think if you don't have Brexit, if the Brexit doesn't happen it's like, it's such a shattering of everything great about Britain. It's great Britain. That's all done with for me. Is the word great. It's like, this is such a travesty. It's beyond belief that this could happen. But anyway, how do you feel? For me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think of anyone in the whole of Britain, and of course I don't know everyone, I think you've got your best shot there. It's my feeling.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's how I feel as well. Last time I met Boris, luckily, I asked him to marry me.
Oh.
So I've already got that in. Now, I know he goes through girlfriends at quite a rate of knots. So I think there's potential right there.
All right.
But don't spill wine on a sofa, or no.
No, that would be bad. Get off me! Yes. Or whatever the neighbour was listening with his Guardian-provided equipment, allegedly.
Yes.
Anywho, I think you're completely right. Our best shot, if there is one, is Boris. I also think, because the thing I love is that repeatedly he said, we are out on the 31st, hell or high water. And because he didn't ever back away from that or say, I misspoke or backpedal, I feel like that is do or die.
Yes.
And if he's saying, if we don't, okay, then general election and I'm out. And then at a more boring level and a less emotional and exciting level, when you just look at the mechanics of Parliament, they're not back until the 3rd of September, By the time they then, if they did do a no confidence vote, which is what they're talking about to get rid of Boris, you have to then wait 14 days to have another one. Basically, because of the way timing works, they can't get Boris Johnson out of there before the 31st of October. So I think, because of timing as well, and because it's Boris, we're going to get Brexit.
Let's see. So Brexit happened back in June 2016. Yeah. Was it an harbinger? I love the word, but I can never pronounce it.
It's a lovely word.
It's a lovely word.
It's kind of a word, we pulled it out actually in kind of in deference to yourself there, because it's got a kind of a nice Brit feel to it. Harbinger.
Harbinger. Was it a harbinger of Donald Trump and that election? Was it, should people have looked at Brexit and said, Trump has a chance?
So I just want to try and squeeze a word in of my own that I love.
Okay.
Purview.
Lovely. Thank you for that.
Yes, it's definitely within my purview to answer this question. Yes, and the harbinger. Yes, it was. So what I think is, if you take the UK, which I'd like to have a little model, but I haven't, and then you just put it 90 degrees anti-clockwise, the UK, you have America. So you have your East Coast, you have New York, and then you have your West Coast, LA, and those two places are so different to the rest of America. And we had that same thing with Brexit, I think, as well. You have, London, and then you have this brilliant place that I live in called the rest of the UK, where real people live that voted Brexit. And are my kind of people. And I think that's why you could see, and it's why I went on CNN and called it that Trump would win, because you could feel that same energy. If you came out here, I came out here, followed Trump at his convention and on the circuit, you could feel regular America, rest of England, you could feel that same thing, and you could feel that he would win. And so I think it's exactly that parallel. And I think what's so terrific about the fact Trump isn't a politician is that's precisely what people needed to be freed. And I think the other thing Trump has done brilliantly that's worked the other way is because he's so explicit about fake news. Now, whether you like that term or not matters not. He has raised a awareness that is now visceral in people not to trust what they're told, or at least to question and challenge it. And that has gone back over the pond to our side. People now, they might not use the fake news term, but they challenge and question, am I being told the right thing? And the other great thing about Brexit not being delivered until now is people have realised these politicians really aren't on our side. There's something about the human spirit, or being a voter, or belonging to Western culture, I think, that you want to believe in democracy. You'll even hold on to it with like your fingertips as you're like falling from the windowsill because you know it's not true. You're like, and you so want to believe in democracy that what Brexit and the lack of delivery of it has done has made people really go, actually, they're not listening to us. They don't care. And that's a real parallel between Trump disenfranchising the media as being powerful and Brexit disenfranchising our politicians as having power. I think that's been very liberating for regular workers, normal people like me, or normal people.
There's almost a spirit, I feel like, in Britain, that there's almost a kind of a Dunkirk spirit there right now.
Blitz.
There's this kind of, and the grit of the people. I mean, we heard some great stories of during the run up to the vote on Brexit, where, and we heard a great story of where there was hairdressers, and they'd be saying things like, well, we did the Googling at home, and we got together and we all sat down together and we did the Googling, and we put a chart up, the pros and the cons, and people took the vote so seriously. They realised, unlike a lot of your votes, a bit like here, by the way, where, for example, here in California, if you're a Conservative, your vote doesn't count, right, in the presidential election.
Or it sits in a box.
Exactly, it's not, whatever. But in Britain, this was a referendum, and people were very clear. I'm the same as anybody now. I'm actually the very same as anybody.
I'm not in a marginal seat.
It doesn't matter. I'm in Luton or I'm in Leeds, wherever I am. It doesn't matter, because I am the same as everyone else, and my vote is really going to count. And people took it really seriously. And for this to have happened, it's really
gives me the goosies.
Oh no, it's incredible.
My little hairs on my arms just went pew. And then people took pens with them. So you would see people on Twitter with taking a picture of their biro or their marker pen to say, I'm taking a pen so they can't rub my pencil out. And I'm like, that's the stuff. That's these people that are so determined, you're not going to take away my voice, I'm going to put it in pen.
But
God, it's incredible.
But just like here and just like there, a large number of people have refused to accept both Trump's election and
the Brexit
result. Either they've tried to challenge it legally, but they've also tried to challenge it intellectually, procedurally, but also that it was the wrong decision.
Wrong. You get no marks for that. You made a bad choice.
But I think people really showed their colours. AC Grayling. It's like
most people. What did he say? Most people in Sutherland wouldn't know how to spell sovereignty.
Like A.C. Grayling. What is it? He's the philosopher laureate. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You know, he should be disgraced. He should lose his job. How dare you speak like that about people? And those people in Sutherland, would teach him a thing or two about how the world works.
It's so true.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. How dare he?
Professor Brian Cox, he was a musician and now he's and he came out and said something. Well, these people who are experts, maybe you should listen for once to people who actually know something.
Oh yeah,
it's very much that sense of it, I think, and I think that's the truth of it. Is if you go to these places, these small towns where people cared enough to go and vote when they've got a job and they've got childcare to look after and something else is probably wrong and they're looking after their mum and dad, they still got there and voted.
Yeah.
They'll be the good people who do something kind. If Grayling fell over in the road, they'd be right there to sort him out.
They'd be the nurse taking care of him in the hospital.
Yeah, and
exactly.
That's the great thing. It's been so uplifting, this Brexit thing.
But it's interesting. I mean, it's so instructive. Like, what a horrible human being you are, A.C. Grayling. What a horrible man you are to talk about people like that. And what I find really hilarious is this is what a Liberal voice sounds like. Aren't you meant to like the little people? Aren't you meant to like, those kind of people who stack shelves in Tesco? I thought that was the whole identity of the Liberals.
Yes.
Was that they were like, they cared more than those horrible Conservatives.
Yes.
Well, they've shown themselves.
Yeah, it turns out actually to be a Liberal means that you are a massive supporter of open borders. You are pro-migration. You are pro-endless immigration into the UK, but it is because you can live in splendid isolation inside Zone 1 and 2 in London. And I think that was very telling as well for us when we were just observing the marches for Remain marches, so people that wanted to stay in the EU. Those marches were full of Zone 1 and 2ers, so the most affluent people in London, and they were mostly white.
Yeah.
You had never seen so many white people in one place in London. I hadn't for a very long time, but these were the Remainers who are preaching to us about allowing everybody in, but of course never have to rub shoulders because they have private schools, private healthcare. And that's the thing, is unless you live amongst it and are queuing for a school place, we've run out of school places in some of our towns and cities now. Women, mums particularly, don't have a place for their kid in September. Women I know, and unless you're a person whose dad can't get their hip, because old people aren't allowed hips anymore because they're too old, and what's the point? Unless you're those people, you don't get it.
Yeah.
So that's why Brexiteers got it, because that's the sort of stuff that made them vote, I think.
Oh, listen, I mean, and that hip stuff, by the way, my father got a hip replacement at 90, and he rocked on for another 5 years, and I remember that my sister...
Well, we know someone who has paid taxes
for years,
for 40 years of her working life,
friend of
and
ours.
she needs a knee.
Can't.
2 years.
2 years. Oh, I thought
2 year wait.
2 years.
Yeah. And she's in pain, excruciating pain. And she's
knee.
this great woman, and it's like, that's an insult to her. That's an awful insult.
So,
yes.
Let's imagine.
This is you trying to maintain order and discipline while we start chin-wagging about our friends' complaints.
That's right.
Carry on.
Carry on, regardless.
Yes. Keep calm and keep chatting.
But socialised medical care or socialised healthcare systems, when you do, just to pick up on that before we go to your thing, socialised healthcare, when you hear Americans, particularly Liberals or Bernie, promising everything will be for free, you do want to kind of get a bus and say, come on the bus, I'll just drive you to my local hospital, have a little look round, then see how you feel about this situation. You know what I mean? You want to show it.
Listen,
I need to get into hospitals and show it.
Yeah, we have plenty of those stories from
here. There are 4
here.
million people in the Republic of Ireland, 1 million people on waiting lists.
Well, that's a good stat. I mean, it's not a good stat, but it's a useful...
it's hit 1 million now on waiting lists for various procedures. It's like, so 1 in 4, it's like... you have to wait. It's
craziness. Back to your thing.
Yeah, back to the order.
Back to the order.
Unless you girls want to talk.
So I want to talk. All right. What would you like to talk about next? Because I'd like to talk about something very serious.
Well, no. I suppose it's post-Brexit, right?
Post-Brexit.
So
okay.
let's imagine 31st of October, Borris emerges victorious and says, "Peace in our time. We've got Brexit." So then the UK is then on a path to prosperity. Vickers and cream, strawberries and cream. He who is tired of London is tired of life. The UK is now
on a trajectory to a golden age of brilliance.
Yes, is that correct?
I'm just going to say yes. You forgot the bit though where on the 31st of October, when we leave, there will just be the moment of just enjoying.
Yes.
There will be.
There needs to be a moment of that.
We need to take a moment
Yes.
of just pure enjoyment.
That's right.
That despite everything, and sort of celebrating the resilience of the British people, that feels really important to me. But then after that, yes, I think there's going to be some bumps in the road, but I think because of Project Fear, this kind of talking down of what's going to happen, the doom and gloom, there's going to be no medical supplies,
no
planes will
milk.
fall from the sky.
Yeah.
Because it's been talked up in that way to be the end of time, anything that's actually going to happen, it probably won't be that bad. You know, it's a bit like when someone tells you this is going to hurt a lot.
Yes. Yes.
Cheers for that. And then it hurts a little bit less.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. And I also think there's something, and this is more an emotional side, that says, because we're so happy that we've got it, we're prepared to take a bit of pain for that because it's so worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with Trump there saying, we're going to give you, a deal, I think that's really so helpful.
I think that is really helpful,
Yeah.
and they'll work well
But
together.
you've been negative in the past about the demographic changes, say, in London
massively.
and in the UK. I mean,
Huge.
Is Brexit going to tell people about the UK now?
Yes.
And do you think Brexit is going to help hinder that, or are they two separate issues?
My view on the state of Britain, and bear in mind this is a view that is loathed by the left. You know, I was called the biggest bitch in Britain, the most hated woman in Britain. You've had death threats. The standard stuff. A few jihadis came out to behead me. They're now in prison. The British government commissioned a play called The Assassination of Katie Hopkins. Those billboards went up. You know, we have Tommy Robinson, who is in prison as a political prisoner. So all I would say, I'm just on a preface that people might think I'm quite nice and reasonable, but that's not how I'm perceived. In the UK, I'm perceived as being one of the most hated figures because I'm outspoken about what I see as the loss of my country. I believe within 10 years, the UK will be an Islamic or majority Islam country. Islam will have taken over. And that's not just me being kind of a doom-monger. By 2035, I am a minority, whites are a minority. And by, in the next 10 years, in the next decade, Muslim births will outnumber births to any other. The number one name in the UK is Mohammed. And the number two name is Muhammad. Now you can say, well, that's also fine. But of course, that isn't about integration or adapting to our culture. That is about not wishing to integrate, that our culture is inferior. And so it's an Islamic culture that we have. And the way that then becomes hardwired into society is there is a Muslim housing association. You know, there is a Muslim police association. Imams select the police officers that are allowed to patrol in cities like London, Birmingham, Manchester, Luton, Leicester, Bradford. All of those cities, I'm a minority white. All of them have Muslim mayors, and our mayors, as you know, are the power players. They're the ones that control finance. And the strategic location of mosques and building of mosques in areas where, so for example, Golders Green is a Jewish traditionally massively a heartland, if you will, of Jewish people in the UK. I think that's
they were
fair.
the first Jewish people I ever saw when I moved to London in 30 years ago, whatever. I walked up Golders Green. I was like, it's like literally for a guy from Tyrone. It was like literally being in a foreign country.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, this is amazing. And those beautiful buildings, the architecture there, those old houses. And
so that is where the next mega mosque is going into Golders Green.
Wow.
So I think it's those sorts of things where you go, the strategic takeover is in place. And the fact that this population is expanding so quickly demographically, means that we are forced out in many different ways. So speaking about the lady who has lost her places for her children, because what they do is bring in outsiders into towns, but we haven't got the infrastructure to facilitate that. So all I guess I'm saying is Britain, I believe, has fallen. I believe Britain will become a majority Islamic country, and people like my family, others like me, are looking towards Hungary and Poland. My Jewish friends are leaving for Israel in numbers, especially obviously in France and Germany as well. The Jewish population is on the move. And the tragedy of that is that you cannot talk of it. You cannot speak of this. Obviously, you just called every label. That doesn't matter, accept all those labels. But it's that this is not a conversation that is allowed to have. And one of the things that's really weirded me out over the last couple of days, a lady I was staying with had the radio on. And the guy, I think it was Rush Limbaugh on the radio. And so I was sitting there thinking, but who's this talking? It was the radio. And I was like, but it's coming from the radio. This voice is... And I couldn't process that someone with those views
was being allowed
on the radio
to speak on the radio.
and I walked up to this gadget like I was some alien.
Yes.
So, but because it is not possible. It's hard to convey this to Americans. It is not possible for those views to be. I was almost wanting to put a pillow on the radio to protect the man because he would be arrested for that stuff.
There's a lot of people who'd like to arrest him here, by the way, and would
would
love to stop him.
But the fact that you cannot even say that, and the fact that Fox News was removed from the UK because it's not acceptable TV for our people.
Yeah.
I just think we're in a darker place.
Yeah, and there's no freedom of speech. People don't know that you can actually get arrested.
I've been arrested,
for
saying something.
Well, so in my case, I was arrested by the Major Crime and Homicide Command of the Metropolitan Police. They deal with the most serious murders, mass murders in the countries. They arrested me for a column in The Sun where I alluded to the fact that migrants coming across the Med were very enduring in nature, and I called them cockroaches. Now, of course, if you layer on cockroaches with Rwandan genocide, there's going to be hate speech. And so I was arrested, taken to a police station, interviewed by 2 police officers with the full, you know how you used to do a recording by pressing play and record? Yes. That's what they did. I was kind of like, that's weird.
Those machines still exist.
That machine still exists. But anyway, so interviewed under caution for that. So being arrested is sort of normal for me. Or having often my children are reported to social services is how the left also go against me. So then I have social services around. And if you have my views in the UK, you can't adopt children anymore. So this line is becoming blurred between what is an appropriate parent. And so my parenting is in some way called into question for my political views.
Now, after the Manchester bombing...
I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about Manchester. Just extraordinary, and because earlier you talked about fake news and the fact whatever version they have of it in Britain, but people know the smell and the look of it, and the fact that horrific, extraordinary terrorist attack was, isn't sort of constantly talked about, to me is extraordinary. These were children. So children were. I'd love you to talk to. I mean, extraordinary. Well, it's almost like there's a collective agreement. We're not going to talk about Manchester. Ariana anyone, by the way, British American people probably don't know Ariana Grande, is a pop star that I don't know an awful lot about, but she appeals, I believe, to teenagers, really,
young girls,
to really
10,
young girls,
11, 12, that kind of age.
So they went to Manchester, to the arena in Manchester. I'm just tearing up just thinking about it here. Obviously massive crowd. Mums and dads coming in the evening to pick up the children.
Yeah, they just kind of drop them off so that they had a grown-up night out. A lot of
and
these
then
little
mum and
girls.
dad were outside when the kids were starting to come out, and this is where a suicide bomber went and released a bomb, an improvised bomb that he'd created at home. A guy educated in Britain, by the way, correct, and killed 22 darlings, somebody's children. And Britain doesn't seem to be. It's like I don't know how it's not like on everyone's, like almost the end of every sentence in a way when people talk in politics. Can you talk to that one?
Yeah, and I think that's a bit. So he waited for the end of the concert. He waited for them to be leaving through a small, this small foyer area, and that's when he detonated the device. And I think the frustration is that Manchester came after as well a number of Islamist terror attacks in the UK. So it wasn't like the first one. We'd had many others before. And what had started to become, because I was writing for the Daily Mail at the time, 2 columns every week, and what had become very clear was the sort of formula for response to terror. So the immediate thing was obviously thoughts and prayers straight out from Sadiq Khan. The second thing is the candlelit vigil, so you have the candles. The third thing was the Eiffel Tower lights go off, or you light the building up with the flag if it's a different country that's had the terror attack. And then the next thing is somebody in uniform comes out and warns that the real threat now that we face is Islamophobia and people attacking Muslims. That's always the standard response template for terror. And I think what it was for me emotionally is the same emotion you have, and it's still now, is that real anger actually combined with sadness, that seems that almost sort of like it's an anaesthetized response mechanism that doesn't ever allow anybody to get into the substance of the matter that people are slaughtering our kids. You know what I mean? It's like putting a Band-Aid on something and hoping it will keep it nice and quiet, nice and calm. And I was and I still am. I still seek to be the antithesis of that. I want to rip the bandage off and say, no, look at it. Look at the kid with whatever now she looks like. Look at this. Because I think unless we continue to be angry, we're in danger of always just having this, we carry on and we will not be cowed. And then people, it's so frustrating, these Dan Snow, the sort of well-known historian, came at me with, look, Katie, we're not cowed. Here I am walking through Hyde Park. And you go, oh, what, is that you not cowed? You're still walking through a park?
Yeah.
Well, if we're cowed, what is it? We have to just hide in our homes. Will that prove we're cowed? Because we are cowed.
Oh, sure.
Because when I cross the road, I get my kids and I stand them next to the, what do you call lampposts in America? Lampposts.
Yeah.
And I have them next to the metal. So if someone rams a truck into us, they're going to be okay. I've started parenting techniques that are about, if I hear a truck coming,
you're thinking,
they know to go in the door. That is not okay. That is cowed.
It's like, all the broadcasters in Britain and all the government buildings, they suddenly haven't taken an interest in gardening. They've got these large planter boxes outside, and other places in churches. They've got planter boxes. They're not interested in flowers. They're there to stop people in trucks and driving into the buildings and blowing them up. The Christmas markets in Germany, they didn't suddenly take an interest in planting flowers.
Mass gardening.
For Christmas. No, this is to stop jihadis with trucks smashing into a Christmas market. And we're told that it's not religious. Islam is there's nothing more religious than smashing a truck into a Christmas market. By the way, and the idea that we're not, as you say, you're supposed to be able to walk through a park. It's not a sign of.
Just to prove you're not cowed.
Yes.
And so that was that thing. And then I think the difference in the response template for a white guy committing a terrorist action with a multi-action rifle or a shotgun or a whatever. This whole thoughts and prayers, blame Trump. A candle at vigil, oh no, blame the NRA. Turn the lights off the Eiffel Tower, blame all white people. Those responses are so different. The contrivance that is political, I find that really disgusting.
And then, but you wrote a famous tweet about this, about you could quote
final solution
to
terror
is needed.
Yeah.
And you lost your
my
job.
radio job.
Yes.
So that's a regret. I don't regret what I wrote in a sense, because this needing to be the antithesis of the calming and the anaesthetising of a society. You've got to sometimes get in there. Now, is that wording particularly helpful? No, it would have been better to say we need a lasting solution. Yeah, but okay, that came out and I was bloody angry that morning. But did it lose me my radio show? Yeah. And did I miss it. My radio show a lot. And the reason I miss it is it links to the Brexit thing again, is that people called it was a call-in show, 10 till 12 on a Sunday. It was the most popular Sunday call-in show, the most popular commercial show. So all I'm trying to say there is it wasn't a failing radio show.
Yes.
I'm not trying to big myself up. But people used to call in, and because I was the only conservative voice on a radio, that's why I relate to Rush.
Yes.
People would call in and they would tell me their stuff because they're in their kitchen and they're in their pajamas often or something, or like with their family or making a roast dinner. They just talk to you and they tell you all these amazing things, and those voices represented all those other good people that thought like that. And that's why I really miss it, and that's why I regret the tweet, because I don't get to have those conversations anymore. And I think they mattered for Britain in a way that people felt they had a voice for a bit. So I regret it in that way. One of the weird things was I was so angry. I think I spelt Manchester wrong. I might be wrong, but I think I did #Manchester. I think I spelt it wrong. And interestingly, in terms of false hate crimes that are committed, there was a contrived setup in a Muslim home in one of our cities in West Yorkshire, and that police force is particularly unusual, West Yorkshire. And that tweet was was scrawled on the wall of this man's house inside, so it became a hate crime that I was going to be arrested for. But the spelling mistake was also repeated on the wall, which is kind of weird, because if you're a graffiti artist looking to hate Muslims and bash them, it'd be weird to have a typo, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you might, if you're a native English person, you might know how to spell Manchester. But if you were not a native English person, you may not know how to spell Manchester.
No, it was just weird that
they
picked it straight off.
I mean,
anyway,
of course,
it got me into a lot of trouble.
I mean, luckily there's no history of hoax hate crimes anywhere, ever, is there? There's been no hoax hate crimes in America. I can
only think of 8 in the last 2 days.
Yes. So.
I'm moving on to something completely different
Let's
now
do that.
because we've kind of come to the end of this conversation. But I always ask our guests a couple of questions at the end, and the first one I want to ask you is, what's your go-to? What are you famous for cooking in your house?
It's a funny question. If my kids were here, they'd be like, "Mum's stuff now." So I'm not really a cook at all. I have a husband. Surprising fact. People are always surprised I have a husband, because it seems incredibly unlikely. He's called Lovely Mark. He's actually called Mark, but he's prefaced with lovely because everyone thinks he's lovely. Really annoying. He's calm. He listens properly, like an opposite of me. Anyway, so Lovely Mark does most of that stuff because he's smart. But the one thing I do is roast dinners. Roast potatoes, roast lamb or roast beef, and roast vegetables. You have to have 6. That's my dad's rule.
Oh, yeah.
So then I can invite my mum and dad. 6 vegetables.
6 things.
6
things.
6 things.
6 things on the plate. Do you want 6 things on the plate?
6 things.
And is there any hack in there? Is there any kind of life hack in that particular roast that you would want to share with people?
Well, this thing I would share is potatoes. Always hot fat, duck fat, goose fat.
Oh yeah.
2 hours. Good.
Parboil. 2 hours. Parboil first?
Oh, yeah, parboil for like 5-10 minutes. But then I go
and
for
then peeled?
Oh, you've got to peel first. Yes. Then you parboil.
Get with the protein.
Sorry, someone in this house doesn't peel the potatoes.
Correct.
Sometimes
but to do roast potatoes?
Yeah. We don't do roast potatoes.
She's not British, you see.
Irish people are supposed to know about potatoes.
Yes.
Potatoes, but sure, the goodness is just underneath the skin.
So 6 things and a roast potato, but I love a roast dinner. And the reason I love it is it's got nothing to do with food at all, is because I'm on the road a lot.
Yes.
And so when I go home, I obviously don't cook a lot, I do a roast and it becomes like a thing or a ting.
She's going to do her ting
I'm
now.
going to do a ting, and I'm going to invite my mum and dad, and we're all going to sit together, and then I feel like I am less of a terrible mum.
Second thing I want to ask is, do you have a cocktail mocktail drinky that you would... No.
Wine, and it needs to be a screw top. Can't stand corks.
Oh, I love screw tops.
Anybody with all the...
it's just life is too short, and I'm all about...
Corks and pretending to taste things.
Yeah, I love the screw top. Totally with you on that.
When people taste wine in restaurants, I just want to go, please, your life is this small.
Number 3, last thing that I want to ask you is a piece of art that means an awful lot to you. So a poem, a play, a piece of music, a painting, a sculpture. What's your...
I go If every time. So If by Kipling. And the reason I go with If, the poem, if you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs. Those sorts of lines to me are, if you can treat triumph and disaster just the same. There's massive... Gets me
absolutely 100%.
And the reason, I guess, is because those are the things. I don't really care what my kids want to be or what they want to do, or if they want to work in a supermarket or whatever. I don't care, as long as they're healthy and as long as they can learn some of these things, like a resilience thing. If things are really awful, maybe you can still find the funny. And maybe if you're doing real great, maybe you can be kind enough to see other people aren't doing so great, and you might be able to help them. Like, those things seem to matter a lot more to me than being really good at something. And so that's my stuff, really. Yeah,
and we're going to put that up on the Facebook page.
We're going to put the poem up.
Rudyard Kipling's If.
What's the name of the Facebook page, Anne?
And the Facebook page is called the Ann Phelim Scoop, and it's the AP_Scoop on Instagram and all those other great platforms.
Where do people find it on Facebook? Say it again, but slower and less Irish.
Ann and Phelim, and by the way, you're not the first person to criticise me for speaking too fast. The Ann and Phelim Scoop on Facebook. And
tell me how you spell Phelim.
Phelim. Look at you. Are you looking for a job here, Katie?
This is very trying to help you along.
No, I'm loving that.
And it's on YouTube. You can see our beautiful... If you like us in a visual format, you can see it.
We're
on YouTube.
Oh, yes.
Many people prefer me in an audio format, I might add. But
thank you so much, Katie, for joining us.
Thank you.
This has been just so fabulous, and we look forward to seeing you in London.
Yes, I'll see you on the 31st.
Yes, you will.
Come on.
Yes, you will. That's going to be a party.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.